Luke, are you a fan of John Wick?
Oh yeah, I love it. Are you?
Oh yeah, of course I'm a fan. Nathan, wait, Nathan, where are you? Are you a fan of John Wick?
Yeah, I think I'm a fan. Welcome to Ignore the Bell. I am John Wick.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Luke.
So we are talking about John Wick films. So the entire franchise. So we've already done a review of John Wick 3. So if you're specifically looking for that, then you can go ahead and look on the channel, or we'll try to remember to post it in the description below. Then we'll get a link in there. Even if Tyler, you could embed that somehow in the video. I have no idea how to do that,
Yeah,
but
I will try to get it in the little iCard.
sure, yeah, like just right here, click on that or tap or whatever you do. I don't know how
Yeah.
technology works. Um, but yeah, so we're going to talk about the John Wick franchise in general. And we do have a sponsor for today, do we not?
Yes, we do. So our sponsor for today is Baba Yaga Mattresses for when for giving you the rest you so desperately are due.
Ooh, very nice. Yeah. Should you set an alarm? Is there any alarm that can wake you up after that?
No, none.
Perfect.
Trust me, you won't want to wake up after that. after you see a Baba Yaga.
That's right. Sorry, boss, I'm not coming into work tomorrow. I'm getting the Baba Yaga mattress. All right, folks, I hope you enjoy.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the bell. We're gonna keep going, people.
All right, so we are talking about the John Wick franchise. So we're going to go for at least 45 minutes, and it'll probably be right around an hour. Now, let me just briefly cover this. So the first John Wick film came out in 2014. John Wick Chapter 2 came out in 2017. John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum came out in 2019. And then John Wick Chapter 4 is set for release on May 21st, 2021. So about 2 years
Oh.
from now. Um, yeah,
See,
Keanu Reeves, though, he is timeless. So, or at least he better
Yeah.
be, because
Right.
otherwise they're going to be like, meanwhile, several years later.
Yeah. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
it's gonna be like forever to get to actually watch like even the first John Wick film. And by forever, I mean like it was within the past like 2 months that I saw the
Right,
first one. Then I saw the
right.
second one, and now I just saw the third one. So now you're telling me I have to wait 2 years?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was so surprised that you had not seen John Wick, because like I saw like the first one like several years ago, and like I just figured you'd be
Yeah.
up on this.
Oh, I
Yeah.
wanted to so badly when it first came out. And, I mean, part of it was for the longest time, like I didn't want to go to the movies by myself,
Oh,
and
okay.
I didn't really have anybody who really wanted to go. So I was like, okay, great. Um, so yeah, and then I did like I bought it, and then it's it wasn't really one of those films where it was like, oh yeah, I'll just pop that in and watch it sometime. I wanted to like really, experience it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, like the first time I watched it, I was in grade 8 and I watched it and I was like not really expecting a whole lot. I heard a lot of people be like, "Oh wow, this is like such a good movie." And then I watched it and I was like, "That was amazing."
That
I'm
was,
like,
yeah, that
"Oh my
was my
goodness."
attitude as well. And because I hear people say, "Oh, it's such a great film, such a great film," and often I'll go and watch it, and like I often turn it off. I'm like, "No, it's not." Like, what are people
Yeah.
talking about? A lot of people I think have got not great taste, let's say.
Yeah.
Um, but this one, then I had such low expectations. I was just like, whatever. People keep talking about it, and it was like whatever, fairly late at night, and it was on Netflix, and I'm like, I'll start watching it. And then like it just blew me away. And then I told Judith, I was like, this movie is amazing. And then I
Yeah.
forced her to watch it with me literally the next night. So I watched it, and then I watched it again the next night.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I did the same thing because I rented it and then
Right.
um and then I watched it alone and I was like, that was amazing. And since
Yeah.
my brother, has done like karate and all that, I'm like, you have to watch this movie. And he watched
Yeah.
it and he was like, that was amazing.
Karate
like,
with a pistol in the hand,
Yeah.
and then it all ends with like a blow to the head, right? And you're just like,
Yeah.
that was amazing. He karate chopped, and then boom.
Yeah.
Oh man, it is. Oh, the action in these films, like, it is so incredible. I mean, even I love what they do with reloading, because
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
he has to reload every once in a while. Sometimes he'll have
does.
another gun that
Unlike
he
a lot of-
uses,
Yeah.
but like, even like he'll like, punch somebody so that they're like, kind of stumbling around
Yeah.
while he's reloading, and you just get to see him reload, which
Right.
is
Yeah.
very satisfying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
like,
go ahead, Luke.
I just like, that is one of the things I love about it, because like in Batman Begins, like when there's that scene where it's all the goons and they're just like kind of standing around, and then they slowly one by one get taken out by Batman, but we don't see Batman except for very partially. But like, I would love to see a Batman movie where we're seeing Batman figuring out all his vantage points and then taking them out one by one, which is what I love about the Arkham games.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
pretty much see this with John Wick, and I'm like, oh my goodness, we get to see, like, the camera doesn't really like go to someone else and just show the villains. It just shows John Wick pretty much the whole time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
find that that to get a little theoretical, like as in film theory with these movies, which this is my particular approach to film. I find like film professors they've got such an incredible ability, and film theorists in general, to examine the language of film, but then they do it with art house films. And look, like, I really do love art house films, a lot of art house films, but they don't do it with commercial films very often. Some of them do, some of them legitimately do, but but a lot of them just don't. And if they applied that to this film, I think it would be revelatory. Like, it would reveal a fair bit, because film has got a particular language, right? That there is essentially syntax to film, that within writing or within spoken language, then it's like this word has to follow this word has to follow this word in order for it to make sense. Now, these films, what they do is they are teaching you how to watch this particular kind of film. And what the camera does, I think, is what the eye does for the viewer. And the camera doesn't blink. And you as a viewer don't blink. And that to me is like, because having a still camera without having and often there's not even sound editing done to it. There's not a film score going on. There's really no special effects. And it's just like this. Just like
Yeah.
That's what the camera's doing. It's just like, boom. I want you to see everything. No secrets.
Yes.
You are going to see the best choreographed fight sequences with guns, somehow having the special effects that are done so well, where you like see people's heads get like blown apart, but it doesn't look like CGI. You see stab wounds, and like you hear like bones break and all of this stuff. But it doesn't feel like you're watching a cartoon the way, and I'm not trying to be too critical here, but like the way a lot of superhero films are, where it's just like, it looks so computer generated. It looks so artificial. But in this, you're just like staring at it and you're just like, that's incredible.
Yes.
I just, while I'm on this topic, I just wanted to mention this part. In John Wick 3, because we didn't do this in the review of it, the part, and I was so blown away by this, the part where John Wick, like the knife fighting scene where he's got all of those guys, like when they're all throwing daggers at each other.
Yeah.
And then when John Wick has got the guy, like he's holding him down, and then he's got the dagger, and the guy's like got his hand against it, and he's like bringing it closer and closer to his eye, and the guy's just like seeing it, and then like it just goes in. And like, this was literally my face for, I would say, a good 30 to 45 seconds after.
Yes.
The entire time. And it's like, I've seen some, because I like horror, so I've seen some of that in horror movies before, but like, I've never seen something that is just so unflinching in an action film. And it's not supposed to be horrifying or gross. It's just supposed to be so intense. You're just like, that stuff happens in battle for guys like warriors who are actually fighting. Like, if you're in combat, like, I mean, just, there are no holds barred if it is a life or death battle. And so you just see that, and it's just like, who is going to win? And it's just like, this film's going to show you everything.
Yeah. And like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's what I really felt with John Wick Chapter 3. I was like, oh my goodness, like it's getting a little bit more gruesome than the other ones, because like especially like the first I think it's the first fight scene in the movie when John is using the book against that one like giant dude, and he like
Kill the guy with a book.
yeah, and he like oh my gosh, he just like he breaks the guy's jaw one way, then he puts it the other way, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he is just destroying this guy. Like, oh,
And then he just places the book back on
yeah.
the shelf.
Yeah. And then even after he stabs the one guy in the eye, he like gets up from the fight, and there's one dude still moving, and he grabs the axe and he throws it, and it goes in the guy's head. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this movie already.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So I think we'll probably come back to some of this stuff. Here's an interesting thing that I have, and I don't know what you guys think of this, especially at the end of John Wick 2, when the bounty is out on his head, and you start seeing how, okay, basically everyone's an assassin. Everyone's part of this. And part of me is like really enjoys that. But then part of me is like, wait, there are more people who are in on this than people who are out of this. It's like 90% of New York City knows what's going on, and 10% don't know what's going on. But that 10%, they walk past people who are murdering each other. They've got like their like AirPods in, and they're just like, none of my business, only in New York. Like, I don't care, I don't see anything. And like part of me is like, this is really fun because it's this secret universe that we're being privy to. But at the same time, like, because at the end of John Wick 2, then Winston is just like, oh, like, watch this, like, with a nod of my head. And then everybody like stops moving and stares. And then he like just kind of does this. And then everybody kind of carries on. And then I'm just like, everyone is in on this.
I would have loved if there was just one person who's in the background, and then everyone stops, and there's just one person who's still walking, and then they like look around and they're like,
hey, what's going on?
Like a jogger or something, just like
right. Yeah, it's like, what is this, a flash mob? I don't understand. You guys didn't choreograph anything other than stopping and then starting up. This is the lamest flash mob I've ever seen. But I guess like, so I do like that about the films, that it is such a big universe, and I don't really find that you question it too much when you're watching the movies. But it is a little strange, like the logic of it, of like just how many people are in on this, because it just like, it's like, oh, that homeless guy is in on it. Those sanitation workers are in on it. The librarian's in on it. Every single person on Earth knows who John Wick is. He walks in, and then it's like, oh, this is a random stranger who won't know him. Then it's like, hello, Mr. Wick. And you're like, this person knows him too? Like,
even the cab driver.
Right, the cab driver. Like, I don't quite get this. Like, was he like campaigning for political office this whole time? It's just everybody knows him. Like, because it's one of those things of like, it's underground, but then the film kind of, within the film, then it's like, it doesn't seem like it's underground. Like, it seems like everyone knows about this, but nobody talks about it.
Yeah, which I feel like kind of would have been really interesting if they were like, oh, it's underground, but then with this third film, be like, now we're taking it to the real world, and like have like tons of people be totally oblivious to what's going on, but all this is happening. And they kind of do it in number 2 when there is that bounty that's on him, that $7 million one, and like him and that one other guy, whose name I forget, are they're just like walking, like one of them is like way up on this one level, and John's like
him and Cassie.
Yeah, Cassian, and they're like just shooting at each other with like the silencers on. Yeah.
And nobody cares. Nobody's like.
Part of me wonders if it's like a New York thing.
That's what I think it is. It's supposed to be like, oh, in New York, people are like, that's not even the weirdest thing I've seen today.
Right. Yeah. We'll just walk by like dark alleys. They're like, oh, somebody's getting mugged. Okay. Like, just
exactly. Exactly. And it's such a strange thing. It's like, oh, okay. I don't quite think that's how New Yorkers would react. But all right. Unless it's supposed to be even more than just it's not New Yorkers. It's just it's 2019. Everybody's on their phone. This is how everybody walks around in public anyway.
Yeah.
So you probably could murder somebody in the middle of like a train station and no one would know because everybody would be staring at their phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. There is so much awesome stuff in these films. I want to talk about the outfits. The fact that in John Wick Chapter 2, then he gets the bulletproof suit.
That's
That
right. That's
that
what
was
I'm
so
wearing.
amazing.
The lining of this is tactical.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, that is just so cool. Like, I especially because like I don't know. Whenever I put on a suit, I almost feel like I'm like, oh man, I just feel like I need to like punch someone because like I'm just like, James Bond, John Wick, they all wear these awesome suits and fight people. I'm like,
For
I
sure.
secretly want to get in a fight while I'm wearing a suit so I can feel cool.
It does look pretty cool. Yeah, they're like the John Wick franchise, and I unfortunately I didn't I got busy so I didn't get to the end of the article, but there's a good article on rollingstone.com about how John Wick films are just terrific action movies, like the kind of action movies that we just don't get anymore, and somehow we're getting them with the John Wick franchise, which is amazing. And it said the way it starts is you're getting kind of like a B-list actor with Keanu Reeves, where a lot of people feel like, his best days are behind him, and he's not, you know what I mean? Like he's not, somebody like whoever, whether you're talking about like any of the Chris's, Chris Pratt, Chris
Hemsworth.
Yes,
Uh,
Hemsworth, Evans, I want to say.
Yes,
Yeah.
Chris Evans.
Oh, did I get one right? Just
Yeah.
Chris, insert last name,
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like
Chris Pine.
there you go. Chris Pine is another like great one. Exactly. So it's that he's not those guys, right? He's not Thor or Captain America, right? So it's saying like, all right, so you've already got this guy where, his star power has maybe faded to some degree. And then the movie is just this innocuous name of John Wick. What on earth does that even mean? And it seems like maybe it's going to be just like an ordinary vigilante revenge film until he gets to the Continental. And that's absolutely right. It's that this seems like, and it could just be like another vigilante story like Death Wish, for instance, with like Charles Bronson or Clint Eastwood with Dirty Harry, right? Like it could just be a regular vigilante movie, this revenge story. But then it's not. Then it turns into this whole universe that's not exactly it's not a superhero universe, but it's like a comic book universe, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not dealing with superheroes, but it is a comic book universe in that you've got clearly established rules, and we start to learn the rules to this whole underworld, right? That you can't, like, it would really stretch the imagination to think that this exists in real life. But when you're watching it, so I'm saying like you're going into fantasy. That's what I mean by it being a comic book universe, that you're entering this fantasy world. And then you start learning the rules of it. Like they've got their particular, denomination, their currency that they're using, their gold coins, and then they've got their, I forget what they call it, but like the marker thing where like you've got where it flips open and then you like stab your thumb and then you put the imprint, and then you've got that whole thing of the I don't know what it's called, but the people who are working in the office where they are in charge of all of the contracts. Yeah, the administrators with the contracts. And I want to describe that as, let's say, analog punk, right? I don't know what the term would be for this. So this is something I'm just throwing out there. I've been thinking, like, how could you describe this? Because basically there's steampunk. Steampunk is taking basically the first part of the Industrial Revolution, where you get steam power for everything, like coal and using like timber in order to generate steam to create, like, to build engines like steam engines and other machines like that. So steampunk is taking the aesthetics of steam engines and all of that, like cogs and anything mechanical. So pre-electronic, pre
Mhm.
gasoline. So you're taking the aesthetics of that, including like top hats and Victorian fashion, and then you're injecting it into a more contemporary time frame. So that would be
Mhm.
steampunk. Imagine if, like, you've got a lot of, if it's basically present day, but we're still using a lot of that old technology and that aesthetic, right? Like,
Right.
I'm not an expert on steampunk, but that more or less I think is a pretty good description of it. Well,
Mm.
this I would describe as analog punk, where you've got analog technology and then there's an explanation. Like, it makes sense of why they have to use this. Like, they're using like rotary dial phones, and they're using
Mhm.
typewriters, and they're using stamps, and they've got like this operator system, but they're kind of cool looking people with like tattoos and
Yeah.
piercings, right? So that's why I'm saying that it's being brought into the contemporary landscape. So those two aesthetics
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
blending together. It's basically something from the 1970s mixed with the 21st century.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so it's like, this is a whole, like, that doesn't exist in our world. And that's where they become fantasy films.
Yeah.
Uh, because who on earth is still using a typewriter and, like, different, like, ink, pads and stamps, like
Mm.
rubber stamps, and like I say, rotary dial phones, but then it's being paired with cell phones. So then they send out a message,
Yeah.
and then, like, they're getting these text messages on their phones. And so you're
Yeah.
combining these two things. So you're slowly learning the rules to this
Mhm.
universe. Um, and that's where the films are like, whoa, well, this is like not just a vigilante story, and it's not superhero fiction. It's this whole other thing. It's just something
Mhm.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
and that's you can go ahead, Tyler, if you want.
well, I was gonna say that it's similar in many ways to what Men in Black did,
Mhm.
when that first came out, where it was like,
Mhm.
well, you've got this whole universe of the films that, like, you need to learn the rules of, and you learn over time. You're starting out with somebody who's outside of this, and exploring the world that way. But it is, yeah, it takes place in our world, except it doesn't. And yeah, there are still like these normal people who are living in this world, but it turns out the majority of them are actually involved in this, uh, uh, science fiction in that case, world, something to do with aliens and either, catching them, or they are aliens themselves, or married to an alien, or whatever. And
Hmm.
it's similar in that way for John Wick, where it's like, oh, okay, this is a completely different universe that exists almost like parallel to our own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not so much like, because I do hear what you're saying, and it is similar in a sense to Men in Black, um, where you've kind of got this parallel universe going on. But this one, it's not it's not operating by different rules of physics or
Right.
different, like it is
Mhm.
still, it's very much, it's like the aesthetics are different, their government
Hmm.
structure is different, the rules, like their laws, their currency, all of that stuff is a whole separate world that's going on as a black market underground,
Mhm.
and that
Yeah.
we're slowly learning that. So it's like, it is still our world, because you're not dealing with like technology or gadgets in, like you get
Right.
in Men in
Yeah.
Black, where it's just like, oh well, now it's pure fantasy. So in this way, it's
Right.
it's not science
Mhm.
fiction, and that's why I'm saying it's not superhero fiction. It's not like
Mhm.
anybody's got powers that can't be
Yeah.
accounted for in our world. It's just they are living a whole other life. This is a
Mhm.
whole other
Yeah.
culture that's going on that we are learning about. And I love the narrative approach to doing this, the way that
Mm.
you get introduced to this, which is
Mhm.
that instead of having a character, because typically the way you do this in storytelling is you have a character who is not part of the world, who steps into it, and then they have to learn the rules, and then
Yeah.
we as the audience, we kind of like jump on that person's shoulder, and we're like, oh, now we can learn because this person, like, we'll learn as they learn. But instead with this is basically starting with a character who got out of that lifestyle and is now coming back in. And so there's a little bit of like on the audience's part that you have to catch up. But kind of as John is getting caught back up in this, he's reintroducing himself to all these people. He's you know, and it's just such an interesting thing. It's like, in order to learn about the currency, you're going to see that he digs up his own currency in the basement and he gets these coins. And then, you know, he goes to the Continental. And then, so it's effectively doing the same thing, but it's skipping over a bunch of stuff that would, I think, be pretty tedious to go through.
Yeah. Skipping over that exposition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just
Direct
skips over it.
exposition.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And that's exactly what I was gonna say, because I love how it's just like with John Wick, like the first one, I love how it's just not like, it's not just like, oh yeah, we're gonna be introduced with this character who's also being introduced to this world, like as Nathan was saying, and it's just like we're just like thrown into the world and being like, well, this is already a world that exists, and here you go, learn about it as you go. Like, and I really like that it does that, because it's not just like the typical like, oh yeah, this person's becoming a part of this world, so are you. It's just like, you, like, it already exists, just figure it out as you go. And I love that, because like, it just makes it a lot more interesting.
It does. And it's something that very few screenplays do. You don't see that very much in movies. And I like it. I'm not sure how you could necessarily do this in other films, but I think it works better in many ways, because it makes the world feel more immersive. It's not like, because in something like Harry Potter, then when Harry first gets introduced, like the Harry Potter universe starts out and it's like this big. And then as you continue like reading the books or watching the movies, then you get introduced to more and more and more and more rules. And you're just like, well, that kind of came out of nowhere. And it's like, oh, there's this, like, it gets bigger, but it feels to some degree contrived, that Rowling did not see all of this when she started writing it. And so then you just keep adding in all of these extra things. But in this, when you're watching it, you're just like, it already exists. It's this wide, big world. And so John Wick, he starts out here, but it immediately is making little references to how big this universe actually is. I mean, I don't know if I quite explained that well enough with Harry Potter. I'd have to come up with some examples of it, but I think that there's something to that within Harry Potter, that the world does start feeling like, I think it starts out feeling pretty small. Tyler, do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. You know, it feels like it's I guess the primary example that I would use is Hogwarts. You know, in the first book, it feels like, yes, that is the school for witchcraft and wizardry. And then by the time you get to like book 4, then it's like, oh yeah, there are actually these other schools that exist as well. And it's like, oh, well, those kind of came out of nowhere. I guess that now makes sense.
Exactly. And now with Fantastic Beasts, then you're like, oh, and there's this whole thing that's going on in America. Right. And that there's American schools. And I look at that and I'm like, but in John Wick, you don't feel that way. It's like, you go into this and there are references to the High Table. You realize that assassins are kind of everywhere, and that it's a very complex world with them having their own currency, and everybody kind of knows who John is. So we're like, oh, well, I want to know who this guy is then.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing there would be, you know, in chapter 2, then you realize that it's not just a New York thing.
Right.
And that, I would say, is the biggest jump of.
Yes, you are right.
Oh,
that is a
I
jump.
didn't expect that, but.
Right. You are right. That is true.
But I also found it one of the most interesting parts, because I was like, oh yeah, it's not just like so controlled. And then also with John Wick 2, when you find out that he had help on like the night of the impossible task, and it's like, oh wait, what? And that's like, I like how it just kind of does that, how it's like, even though it didn't explain this before, it still builds on the world that's already there, but like at kind of a controlled pace. So it's like, because it's not just like, oh yeah, by the way, we didn't mention this before, and it's contradicting what we said before, but he had help on the night of the impossible task. It's like, oh, they just never really talked about the impossible task much until they were like, oh yeah, and he had help. And then I was
Right.
like I found that was a really interesting thing to add because
Mhm.
it didn't feel like forced. It didn't feel like they were just like, oh well, we had to come up with something, so yeah, we just made it this way. It was kind of felt like it was just like because like they never really describe what the impossible task was or anything like that. Just that John Wick killed a ton of people and like it was surprising that he was able to do it. And then like you find out that he had help, and it's just like really interesting how they just keep adding like small details. It's like almost like details you left out of a story, but like then you explain that was there, and people are like, "Oh, okay, I can see how that happened and all that." And so I think that that's like one of the most interesting things that the movies do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's exactly they hold up, I think, to a fair degree of scrutiny, because they're still fairly simple stories.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's not like they have written themselves into a corner the way I think
yeah,
the MCU universe has done, like MCU films have done. They've kind of painted themselves into a corner where, like, well, the only way to resolve this is through time travel. Right.
Right.
Because like what else do we do, and how do we account for these characters that we like killed off but then we don't want them killed off? It's like you're okay, like you're creating these narrative problems that are going to be very difficult to solve, but John Wick doesn't really do that.
hmm
That I don't think there's a lot of, you know um there's not much that has to be accounted for. And one of the great things I think in these films is that it's surprising to see that you've got all of they build up John Wick as this larger than life assassin who is
hmm
just so has got skills that are unbelievable, right?
Mhm.
And if you are going to build up a character like that, you now are setting up expectations. Like expectations are up here for audiences that, well, he better live up to the hype. And I think that it's
hmm
hard to do that. And somehow
yeah,
that he exceeds those expectations, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
That you actually get a payoff, because
hmm
that's a really difficult thing to do, to establish.
hmm
He is so crazy skilled. You have no idea. Like he killed like three guys with a pencil, with a
yeah,
pencil. And then you see it in John Wick Chapter 2 where he does it again with a pencil. And then you
yeah,
see it in John Wick Chapter 3 where he kills a guy with a book. And then you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, this guy legitimately, like whatever you've heard about him and the whole description of him, he's actually even better than that, while at the same time
yeah.
not feeling cartoonishly good.
Yeah, like I really like how they make it seem realistic that like the stuff that he's doing isn't just like, well, that's impossible. There's no way someone could have done that. It's like,
Right.
oh, I feel like someone totally could have done that and totally could have used a
Mhm.
book to kill someone. Like, it's just so I like that's one of the parts that I find the most interesting about the action is that like while he's still doing these things that should seem impossible, it seems realistic at the same time, and
For
that's just
sure.
like so good. It makes the action that much better.
Now, in John Wick Chapter 2, did he kill three people or only two people with the pencil? Because I
I
thought
don't.
he only
Two
killed
people.
two.
Yeah,
Maybe it was two, but
maybe it
in
was.
any case, you
Because,
get to see him do it, right?
Yeah,
yes, yeah, I'm expecting in John Wick Chapter 4, he's going to end up killing five people with a pencil.
Right.
um, yeah, no, it's I want to talk about Keanu Reeves though.
Sure.
He is like the perfect casting for this
yeah,
in the same way that Michael Keaton was the perfect casting for Birdman, right? Like where it's both of those films are talking about, oh yeah, well the his better days are behind him and he was, like this person who was really well known and so high up, and then and it's that person coming back, right?
Mhm.
And for Keanu Reeves, like the Matrix trilogy, of course, is what most people know him for. And then
Mhm.
he's been like gone for so long, and the film plays it up so well. I mean, like
Yeah.
advertisements played it up certainly, but even the film itself plays it up where it's, like, yeah, he's back. And it's like you get this feeling of, oh, I it feels like he never really left. You know what
Mm,
I mean? Where
yeah.
it's like, I want to find out about what Keanu has been doing since since then.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a lot of story that happened in between that could be really cool to see. Um,
Mhm.
and I feel like that works really, really well. He's such a perfect casting for it. And my goodness, just the choreography that he is able to pull off
Yeah.
is
Oh yeah.
phenomenal. Like
Mhm.
the the choreography in these films in general is mind-blowing. The fact
It
Mhm.
that
really is. The
you're you're
choreography is, yeah.
you're seeing these actors' faces. You're seeing them move.
Mhm.
It's not stunt doubles or CGI or
Yeah.
whatever. It is actual actors
Mhm.
like doing these things so
Yeah.
perfect, like being thrown through glass and
Mm.
like punching each other, kicking each other in the groin, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
all of it. Like it feels so real. And of course, the fact that everything is done in these long takes, right?
Yep.
It,
Yes.
it helps so much. And I mean,
Yeah.
Nathan, we've talked about this before compared to, like the Bourne films.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
I don't understand who likes those movies or who's impressed by that. Like I mean, I don't get it. Um,
Yeah.
that it yeah, I mean, if anybody, like, if you don't know what we're talking about, I mean, it's just like, imagine somebody like filming two guys fighting in a bathroom stall during an earthquake and filming it like
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
With several different cameras.
Yeah, and you just keep cutting from one to another to another to another to another, and then we're supposed to
Yeah.
be impressed by this. Then we're just like, I don't know, I think I saw a pant leg, but that's all I
Right.
saw. Like I didn't see
Yeah.
anything, and I just like felt like, why did I pay money to see this? Um,
Yeah. And
but
like that's one thing that frustrates me because like it seems like all of Hollywood took what the Bourne films did and just used it. And I'm like, why do you keep using shaky quick cam and quick cuts? I don't want to see this. And then John Wick came out and they were actually using like long shots and so you could see what's happening. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes the movie so much better. And like, it's like I like to compare it to the Darth Vader scene in Rogue One because like it's just like yes, like the Vader scene is basically a John Wick action sequence put into Rogue One, and then everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" But that is every action scene in John Wick, and it's like every scene just like even though you think it can't get better, it does, and every action scene is like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I can't believe that they keep making the action so good and so much better. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. And I mean, I love the aesthetics of this film.
mhm,
And what I mean by that is not just the set design and the costumes and all of that, but even within the fights, like this whole gun fu approach to it, because
mhm,
I have a hard time watching some martial arts films because part of me is just like, I kind of feel like, Harrison Ford, playing Indiana Jones when like that giant guy is going to fight him in like Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then he's just like, and then he shoots him, and then he like puts like, or no, it's the guy with like the sword. Sorry, it's the guy
yeah,
with like the swords, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
like the two scimitars, I think, and then he just like shoots him, and like, and it's this hilarious scene of like, right, no matter how skilled you are with blades or with your own hands, your own legs,
mhm,
ultimately a gun will cut you down whether you
yeah,
have those skills or not. But then in this film, it's like, what if you have somebody who's got both, who's both
yeah,
incredibly skilled with martial arts and also knows how to do that holding a firearm and can use daggers and can do all kinds of mixed martial arts moves with like multiple people coming at him, and you don't have a bunch of people waiting on the sides like waiting to get in, and then it's like one at a time. It's none of that nonsense. There's none of that silliness. It's that people are still trying to come after him, but then he'll use a guy that he's already subdued and use him as a shield, right? So then like in John Wick 3, it was literally funny. Everybody in the theater laughed when he holds the guy, and the guy keeps throwing daggers, and then he's hitting his own dude in the back, right?
Yeah,
and it's like it's brilliant.
No, absolutely. It's I mean the gunplay is fantastic. Everything is just so perfect in terms of the action sequences. Like as we mentioned, about like the reloading and like when he'll like throw somebody to the floor, and it's just because I don't have time to take you out right now, so I'm just going to subdue you. Like just toss
holding
them
a guy
aside.
down while he reloads, like that happens multiple times. Holding him down like with the weapon, and then like reloading, and then finishes them off. It's it's really incredible.
Yeah, and even when he's still got bullets in the chamber, but he's like, well, this guy's already unarmed, so I'll take him to the ground, but there are more dudes coming after me who have weapons and can kill me, so I'll take them out first, then shoot this guy.
Right.
And like he does that a lot, and it's like, but it's smart, and it's like also helps stylize John Wick's fighting, and it's like
exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
It's just so perfect.
And I like the fact that I like it when he throws his weapon. It's he'll throw it in the guy's face. He'll kick the guy in the groin. He'll go for the knees, and it's just like this is life or death. And he is as innovative and as creative as you can imagine when it comes to any kind of combat. And that's where I'm saying you actually get a payoff. You don't just hear that he's awesome, but then it's like, oh, but he's not quite what he was, because I think that a lot of people will point to Star Wars and say that it's like, when have we really seen Vader like at his peak? When do we really see this Jedi? Like a lot of people will criticize it and say like we want a little bit more, but in this I don't think you can ask for more. Like it's mind blowing.
And like I'm kind of curious to see what they would do with because I would love to see them do like a Netflix series of like John Wick before the first one, like when he like everything that he did and then leading up to his impossible task. Because like if you say that he's rusty now, then he must have been completely untouchable when he was young. Like my goodness, like he would have been just like this unstoppable, like anything. Like no one would be able to do anything.
And I don't think that I don't think you're wrong in suggesting that. I would be really, really surprised if that does not ultimately happen. That we're like, I think at some point we're going to get young John Wick films or a young John Wick series where they're going to recast the lead role. I see that happening. I don't know whether they're going to be good, but because
that's what I'm worried for.
Because part of my admiration for these films is that they're movies that really don't get made very much anymore. And it's not just that they are action movies that are using a style that doesn't get made anymore, where you've got a still camera and it's not editing and editing and editing. And it's not cut. And it's not swiveling around and it's not CGI. So it's not only that you get to actually see everything, but beyond that, it's an R-rated action film. You don't get a lot of R-rated films anymore. And because and there's the whole business side of it that you're not going to make as much money because teenagers are not necessarily going to be able to go and see this film. And so if you go R-rated or PG-13, well, if you tone down the violence in order to satisfy the MPAA, then if you tone it down and you tone down how graphic it is and the blood and all of that stuff, then you're going to make more money. And the thing is, yes, but when you do that, you also are going to lose credibility, that the film doesn't look realistic anymore because you're not going to see wounds. You're not going to see the actual violence being inflicted upon people. And so I think that it's impressive that John Wick, the first one, was made, and I'm grateful that it was a box office success. And now that you get 2 and 3, and now there's going to be 4, I'm hoping that that encourages other production companies to take a risk
Yeah.
on an R-rated action film, because I really don't want to like I get why they're doing it, but it's a money-making strategy that it's like, well, if we just have a movie where people get shot but like you don't really see wounds, that in most, like if you look at any like superhero film, then they're PG-13. So then
Yeah.
people get hurt, but they get hurt with no blood.
Yeah. Like it's like Wolverine in the first few X-Men movies, and it's like, but he's just like, why isn't he stabbing people in the head? And it's
Right.
like,
Right.
like you're killing them, but you just keep stabbing them in the chest and stuff, and it's just like, but then Logan comes out, and you're like, yes, this is what I wanted all along.
That's
Like,
right.
thank
Yeah.
you.
That's right. That
And
you're
so
limiting
yeah,
yourself from a narrative perspective. You're putting limitations on the characters. And I hate that. As a storyteller, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, don't do that. From a business
Yeah.
standpoint, I'm like, totally, I understand why you're doing it. But can we please have
Yeah.
some? Can we please have some R-rated
Yeah.
films where it's just go
Mhm.
nuts?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and like,
not only, limiting yourself as from a storytelling perspective, but also just from in general creative perspective, where
yeah.
the choreographers, then it's like, oh
Yes.
yeah, and then you can do this,
Mhm.
but it's like, oh no, 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 we can't do that because if you show the blade come through the body, then all of a sudden it goes up, and it's like,
That's right.
oh well, then what are we supposed to do?
That's right.
Yeah. And like, not to mention, coming from someone who is not 18 and technically not supposed to be able to get into these movies, I love them, and I watched them. I watched Logan, which came out when I was in grade 10, and so that would have made me like 15. I watched that then in theaters, and I'm like, whatever, I don't care. I want to watch this movie. It looks great. Like,
Right.
and I was super excited when he started actually stabbing people in the head. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, why haven't you been doing this all along?
Right.
Like,
Yes. Right.
Absolutely.
That's exactly it. That it's hard to buy into those films when you're just like, oh, well, the reason why he doesn't do that is because of Hollywood and because of
yeah.
PG-13 and the rating. So then you're watching it going, well, great. Now I'm thinking about that instead
Yeah.
of being absorbed within the film.
Yeah.
Now, okay, I really want us to talk about dogs.
Okay.
I am not a dog person at all, but of course, like the catalyst, if you will, of the first John Wick film is his dog, which was the last gift from his wife. That is the beginning. Okay, there goes the timer. Um, and that is fantastic. Even though I'm not, I don't care about dogs, and it also has that, emotional connection of, of being related to his wife. But then, now that we're into, and then, he gets a new dog at the end of John Wick 1, and it's obviously not a replacement exactly, right? Like it fills a gap, but it's not the same. And I think that really comes through, I mean, especially when he doesn't have a name for the dog. I think not even at the end of chapter 3, he still doesn't have a name for it, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and that is fantastic. But then in chapter 3, then you're seeing these dogs working with Halle Berry's character, and you get this additional appreciation for the way that dogs are interacting with these assassins or mercenaries, which are referred to as dogs of war. And I think that is something that it's more subtle in chapters 1 and 2, but then in chapter 3, I think they focus on it a little bit more. They have at least one line. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like, relating the assassins to dogs. And I went, yes, that's, exactly what we needed.
Right. And there is a fair bit of significance to the idea of like to dogs themselves, like because and you see that certainly with the German shepherds that Halle Berry's character has. that dogs are pack animals. They
Yes.
look to a leader and they can be trained to be obedient. So if you're looking at these people as mercenaries, then it's like they've got a hierarchy to their society,
Hmm.
right? So you've got the top dog, you've got the alpha, and then you've got everyone else who's got their role within that. And the way that this functions is you have to be obedient and you have to defer to authority.
Yeah.
And then you've got John Wick, who is very much the lone wolf in this, right?
Mhm.
That he is
Right.
kind of going
Yes.
outside of the order altogether, and he's kind of his own alpha who is not
Yeah.
seeking out any kind of like he's not trying to lead necessarily. He's not trying to establish a new
Mhm.
hierarchy. He's just saying you've got this whole structure, this whole system in place, and I don't really want to be part of it, but if you guys are going to come after me, then I'm going to be the most dangerous wolf imaginable, and I'm going to like pick you
Yeah.
guys off. But I think that there is something to that of the relationship between mercenaries and canines.
Yeah, and I think even I think it was you who mentioned, and I'm not sure whether it was in this episode or the review of chapter 3, but you said, like Keanu Reeves, like John Wick is an old dog using his
Yeah,
old tricks, right? And I
yeah,
don't think that's, an accident. That's
right.
that's
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
really plays into it.
that's right. He's going back to what he knows, and he is very much an old dog
Yeah.
in this series. Uh, yeah, that's an interesting point to bring up with the dogs. Um, Another thing that I noticed in chapter 3 is and it's the language of film that you get this the editing where you've got the young ladies who are training for ballet. So you've got these
Mhm.
ballerinas, and then you see these guys learning martial arts where they're doing some kind of wrestling, right?
Yeah.
And so to see like the back and forth of what is happening within these films is carefully choreographed, that there's a series of steps that
Mhm.
you have to learn very much like it's a different kind of art form, right? It's the martial
Mhm.
Right.
arts. It's an art form that we're in which you are using your body to, but it takes
Mhm.
discipline and training to be able to do this. But I
Yeah.
liked that you get that as and it really is for people to appreciate this as an art form, to say
Hmm.
like, because to me it's like this is the kind of dancing that I get because
Mhm.
Right.
like
Yeah.
I'm not great when it comes to appreciation of dance. Like I love art appreciation in general, and I can appreciate a lot of different art forms, and I feel like I do. But dance, I will openly admit, dance is an art form that I don't get. I don't
Mhm.
understand dance.
Yeah.
And I look at it like when people do interpretive dances, and I'm like, I don't understand how like doing this means freedom, or
Yeah.
like
Right.
doing this means like agony, or I'm like, I just see people waving their limbs. I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
I understand people definitely understand that something's being conveyed through that particular kind of motion to achieve art, uh, to achieve artistic expression. But in this, and I'm like, oh, this is the kind of dancing that I get, this
Right.
combat. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
and you look at it
Yeah.
and you're, as much as you are cheering John Wick on, at the same time then you're looking at it and you're saying, you're just kind of in awe of how well choreographed this whole thing is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially
Yeah.
like coming from like my perspective, because like I've done a lot of martial arts as well, then it's just like that's like why I love so many action scenes, but especially like in John Wick, because I'm like mostly because I can see what's happening. Then
Right,
I just
right.
like I'm like, oh, I just love to watch all this because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're using jujitsu here, and oh my goodness, there's some karate and stuff, and it's
Mm.
just like, oh, it's so fun to
Yeah,
like
I'm
see
curious about
what they're
that. Like,
using.
yeah, so can you speak to that more? Because I don't have any background in that at all. So
Um,
like what do you know as far as martial arts, and like what did you notice? Because you said you saw jujitsu and karate in there.
Yeah, a lot of jujitsu that he uses is like when he like takes someone to the ground, like the throws and stuff. That's more so like judo and jujitsu, and like because he'll do that while he's like usually when he's got like a gun or something. Because like we've talked about when he's reloading or when like he takes someone down, shoots people who are standing up, and then shoots a person on the ground. Like usually he'll do something along the lines of jujitsu, whether that be like an arm bar or something like that.
Yeah.
Then that's a lot of interesting stuff. I haven't done much jujitsu or judo, but I still see that and I'm like, oh, I can like I know that that's some of the moves, and that's really cool that they've incorporated that within like him fighting while using guns. And like sometimes he just does stuff like that's like really cool because like there's a scene in John Wick 2, it's like in the very beginning, and he like um I think he hit someone in the throat with his one hand, like he hits him in the throat like that, and then he like claps, like, well, not claps, but like smacks him in the ears with both hands. And I really like that scene because it's like he's just like, I love how he doesn't care about like, because a lot of people will be like, oh wow, that's dirty fighting, but I'm
Right.
like, no, it's not. Like if I got
It's
into a
life or death.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm
Yeah.
like, if I'm not like, if I ever got in like a bar fight or something, I don't really care if that's cheap or not. I
No.
like, why would I? Like, if you knock me out, you could kill me. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
I've
I don't
never
like,
understood that outside of competition. Within a
yeah,
competition, I understand that there are
yeah,
established rules.
Right.
But in a legitimate fight, I have never understood this
yeah,
idea of, all right, but don't use your feet because, that's for girls. I'm
yeah,
like,
Right.
what?
yeah. Like, it's just like that's
Yeah.
stupid. So I love that. And like in like karate and stuff, they don't really care about that either. They'll be like, no, whatever. Like you hit anything that you want, because unless you're in like a tournament, because that
Right.
like or like
That's what I'm
sparring.
saying.
Like
Yeah.
if you're like practicing with someone, then you obviously don't do that because then like you don't want to actually hurt them. You're
Right.
just trying to practice and get your technique right. And
Right.
like so like but then when you're actually fighting them, they're like, yes, you want to hit like the pressure points, all the stuff that's gonna make them hurt the most. And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what you want to go for. And like so that's what I love mainly about with John Wick is that he does that. He like kicks people in the knees and he does that. And also something that I really like is that as far as I can remember, he never throws a kick above the waist, which is I totally understand that because not because you don't want to like fight cheap or whatever, but like we see him fight people who do that and he like catches their leg and just throws them on the ground, like he'll sweep out their other leg
Right. Right.
that makes
Mhm.
them off balance. And it's like I can totally understand that. I don't really know if I was in a fight if I would want to throw a kick over my waist because if they could catch it or block it
Yeah.
or do something that would throw me off balance, then it's like, well, I don't know if I would want to do that because that could put me more in danger than you unless I know for sure I can hit this.
Right.
Like,
For sure.
so I really like how he doesn't really do that much, and he'll do a lot more of just like a lot more hand to hand, like actually punching or hitting someone open hand in the throat, or even like some karate chops I think he's used, um, which is really interesting too, because a lot of the times in like sparring and stuff they'll be like, oh no, you don't really use open hand that much, but like I think it's cool, and like you see it in like a whole bunch of old karate stuff, because like
Yeah.
why not? Like there are people like way back there who like used to like what's called a spear hand, where you like like you have your fingers like just straight up and you like stab like and do that, but like they'll like throw a watermelon in the air and then stab through the watermelon with their hand, and I'm like, that is insane.
Dude.
Like
My
You're gonna
goodness.
jam
I
your
know.
fingers.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like when you're playing football and like you get your jammed fingers, like that
Yeah.
hurts so much. But then I see that and I'm like,
Right.
what? How do you
Yeah.
even do that? Like, oh my goodness.
Seriously.
And it's just like to see
Man.
like John Wick sometimes use like an open hand, like even when he like throws strikes the one person, he gets them like with this part of the hand, just hits them in the throat with that. And I'm like, oh,
Right.
that is, I just appreciate that a lot because I'm like, oh, there's so many details that's in this movie, and like, because I don't use guns very often, but I'm sure that there's a lot of awesome like gun techniques that they use that would be
Right.
like that you could just appreciate a lot if you knew more. And so with the like hand to hand, I love just appreciating all the action that's done.
So I think the one question that everybody wants answered is, does he know Kung Fu?
John Wick, because
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so. Or
Okay.
maybe. Like
Because this is the funny thing, right? Because everybody laughs at like Keanu Reeves or The Matrix. I know
Yeah.
Kung Fu.
yeah.
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 But yeah, and I do love those lines in particular. I didn't notice any, at least I don't remember any from John Wick's chapter 1 or 2, but I noticed two moments in chapter 3. There's the one moment where he said, um, uh, that he had a choice, I don't know,
Oh,
because
I think I
like
remember that.
he was standing in front of Winston, and Winston is like, "You have a choice," and he's like, "What's the choice?" Or like,
Yeah.
I don't know, or "You're saying I have to choose." I think that was it. Which
Yeah.
like, is exactly from like The Matrix Reloaded when he's standing in
Mm.
front of
Mm.
the architect.
Right.
And then there was the other one. Oh man, what was the other moment? Chapter
Uh,
3. There was definitely another one that like
yeah. Um,
really stood out, and like people in the audience, like in my theater, recognized it too.
yeah.
Huh.
Oh,
Yeah, I can't remember, but like, yeah, I do remember there being another like reference that was like really a huge reference to the Matrix.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I
Uh,
just can't remember it right now.
So
so
I wanna wrap this up. I'm not trying to make this too premature, but like just I do have other things I have to get to, and so
Mhm.
like I know we could keep going on this.
yeah.
Mhm.
Do you guys have anything very briefly like? I know we talked about it a little bit in the chapter 3 review, but anything negative to say? Like my only like negative thing was just like everyone's an assassin. There's a little bit of like it kind of stretches credulity to some degree where it's
Mhm.
like it's a little incredible, like it's hard to buy it, the
Yeah.
credibility of this. Um, because if you've got that many people who are in on it, like I also am like how, what is like their economic structure to this thing?
Yeah.
Because like if you've got that many people involved, how are they all making money and what are they doing?
Mhm.
Anyway, that's me thinking too much about it. I don't really think about this when I'm watching it, except I did think to some degree, like, is everyone in on this? Like
Yeah.
Right.
at the end of
Yeah.
chapter 2, I didn't like how everyone in the park stopped. Everyone. I'm just like,
Yeah.
how did he even set that up? How did he orchestrate that? Because if I were like, let's say if I'm just a regular person and then I want to go have like I want to eat like a Subway sandwich on the bench, are they going to kick me out? Are they going to say you need to leave the park? But everybody else is going to look like a normal ordinary person. Like how
Right.
did they arrange for that?
Yeah. Um, but yeah, like one of the only things that I would say that I didn't really like about the franchise so far, even though John Wick Chapter 2 is my favorite of the three, I would say that um, I didn't like the like first like 15 minutes of it, how it was just like him going to get the car because I felt like it was
Oh,
way
yeah.
too much like the first one, and then you got like pretty much an actor who's trying to do his best impression of the previous actor from John Wick Chapter 1 that was better, and being like Baba Yaga, he killed three guys in a bar with a pencil and all this, and it's
Right.
just like it
Mhm.
just feels way too much. I feel like they could have just cut out like the first 15 minutes, just show up to him at his house with the ball and his dog and just the car that's all beat up, and then like I
Mm,
feel like the movie could have started there, and I would have been totally fine with it.
okay.
Yeah. I would agree with that, with both of your points. To me, the only thing is dogs, because I'm not a dog person, but but I do think, again, like the film does a good the films do a good job of adding extra importance to the dogs so that it does feel like it has to be dogs. Uh, yeah, outside of that, I had mentioned, like Halle Berry, that one moment that felt a little bit like too dramatic
Mhm.
compared to the rest of the films. Um, outside of that, um, no, I mean, I do want John to actually name his dog, though, his new dog.
Yeah. Please name
Right.
him Neo.
Huh?
Um,
Just name him Neo, so that way it can be another Matrix
oh yeah, that'd
reference,
be good.
That would be great.
or
Yeah.
Anderson or something.
My only other point of criticism is like in chapter 2, I don't really like the casting very much. I don't like Common playing the role of Cassian, especially how they get him to play that role. So Common, I've seen him like I watched Hell on Wheels, and so that's a series. It's like 5 seasons or something in length. So he was on that for like 3 or 4 seasons of it, and I've seen him in other things, and I just they were trying to make his character seem suave and sophisticated, but I don't think he's a good enough actor to pull that off. I really don't. A lot of people like comment. I don't. Just he doesn't. He sounds like exactly who he is. He sounds like a guy from. I think he's from Chicago, but you know what I mean. Like Lawrence Fishburne, I buy. Like Lawrence
Yeah.
Fishburne
Yeah.
is because he's a Shakespearean actor, because he's got a background there, then there's a particular aesthetic that he brings to films in the way he enunciates, his tone of voice, facial expressions, the way he carries himself. But Common, it's like this guy is supposed to speak Italian. I cannot imagine that dude, being in some Italian class, like, because they have him speak Italian a couple times, but it just sounds like the worst Italian I've ever heard. And I'm just like, he's just such a tough guy. Yeah, but I'm also cultured and I know Italian. I'm like, I don't see you learning the grammar of Italian. Like, I don't know. That's kind of
Yeah.
and I don't like Ruby Rose being cast in that, and how they get her to do sign language. And like, I think that's supposed to make her seem more badass because she's so strong and silent. And I'm just like, I'd rather have her just speak. I don't like the whole.
I was wondering, like, because I didn't know who the actress was, but I was wondering if like she was supposed to be like mute or deaf or something.
Right,
And I was like, I don't know.
They didn't even establish anything with that. And so it's just like, won't it be badass if she doesn't even talk? It's like, okay, but it's kind of cool if she doesn't talk, but then you do get her to speak. You're just getting her to speak another language. You're getting her to speak sign language.
Yeah.
So you didn't make her, silent.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make her seem tough and mysterious. I don't know. I just don't really like the casting of those two. But that's just a little thing.
All right. So, what would you guys say is your favorite action sequence if you have one from the whole franchise?
Oof.
I don't know.
I can start off with mine while you're thinking. Because
Sure.
my favorite one would definitely be probably the one in number 3 when they've all got the knives and they're just like throwing them at each other in that antique shop, and like then like he's holding the one guy while he gets all them thrown in his back and all that. I just really like that one.
I really like the library fight scene at the beginning of chapter 3, but I don't know if I'm just saying that because like I just saw it.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I think like the home invasion scene in John Wick chapter
that's
1.
pretty good.
That's like really, really fantastic. Him being like totally taken by surprise and everything.
Yeah.
And like him not even being ready to be back into the action, and yet he still does so much. And it's just the first real look at what he can really do.
That's what I put in my book, Orphans of Liberty. Literally, that's the first time that we really see my guy fight, and it was a home invasion from other bounty hunters. And then, he wasn't prepared. I know, because I wrote Orphans of Liberty before I saw John Wick, and then I'm like, hey, this is the movie for me. I love this kind of stuff. I would say like I think it happens at the end of the first film, but I haven't seen that in a little bit. But I know in the second film when he's driving his car and he swings it around and he literally hits the guy and he goes flying with like the front end of his car. I love that because I'm like, it's good driving. It's hilarious. It's so effective. And it's a whole other kind of combat. It's like, what if you just swing the car around and literally like you can't do anything against that. It's like this massive piece of machinery just boom. I'd say that's makes me laugh every time. Like I'm a psycho. I'm just...
I do also like that action sequence between him and Cassian when they're doing this big epic fight, and they both got a handgun, they're shooting at each other, and then they take out knives, but then they get to the Continental and they're like, gentlemen, there will be no business conducted on Continental grounds, and then they just kind of stop and go have a drink at the bar. It's just like I love that. And what would you guys say is your favorite John Wick film?
I don't know. I think either the first one or the third one. In part because I don't like the casting in the second one. But I would say maybe the first one. I like him in the car. I like that a fair bit because I'm more of a car guy, and so I like seeing those sequences. That'd probably be my choice.
I think I would also probably say the first one, just because of that scene with him giving the ring to the head of the guy in the third one, like giving his wedding ring away.
Yeah.
And that,
I know. I
the
like the
first one did a
emotional,
much better job.
right? Because I like the emotional depth as well of the first one, and
Yeah.
that kind of peters off towards the third. But seeing Keanu Reeves at the beginning, where you see him grieving, you see him depressed, and like
Yeah.
you see these guys who go after him and like killing his dog and all of that, that you just are like legitimately like moved for him to do whatever he wants. But by the third one, you're a little removed from it. So then he's doing
Yeah.
all of these cool things, but I don't think you're as emotionally involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, even Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Is he the only sniper in this whole world? Because like after that, like there's a $7 million contract on John
Yeah.
Wick's head, and no one is just on this building with a sniper. Like
Right.
boom,
That's got to
headshot,
be the
got
way to
him.
do it, right? You don't want to
Yeah,
get
like
close to this dude.
yeah, exactly. Like where are all the snipers?
Right. All right. We gotta wrap it up there. But yeah, that was great, and I'm sure like I don't know, maybe 2 years from now we'll do the John Wick 4
Yeah.
review. Yeah.
It'd be great if we did it before John Wick 4 comes out.
Oh, if we
Oh,
can
yeah.
manage that, that'd be great. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
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 Ignore the bell, people. We're gonna keep going. We're still ignoring it. Don't worry. I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.